From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Beres here with you on a Tuesday. Good show. I actually look forward to the show. There was a time we did real estate shows, and I said, okay, we're going to hear the same thing over and over again because this is a very hot market, and I know this. But with our guest this morning, every time he comes on, I learn stuff because, in my opinion, he's on the cutting edge of what's happening in real estate and how it's done, and a world of it that I've never really understood until he started coming on. I mean that sincerely because on this show, I don't really care if I flatter my guest or not. I'm going to ask hard questions one way or the other. If they don't like it, they can leave. So I'm honest. And that's really, truly the way I feel about Bernie Gallerani. He's a real estate guy. He's sitting here smiling. And
it's funny. That's okay. You don't care, huh?
Well, no, I care. I don't want to insult anyone, but I don't. A lot of people are like, well, you know, he's sitting right next to you. You're going to say something nice. I don't always do that. And,
I appreciate you welcoming me like you do.
I hope that's it's not a backhanded compliment.
Is it one of those like I should have a tissue box here in case you make me cry? Okay.
Not at all. But I mean, I've learned so much from you. And coming on today, this is great. Bernie, I got to ask you about your new commercial. And the only reason I ask you, if you've seen it, Bernie is someone his business advertises, and we'll explain what you get from that. And certainly part of you coming on the show is getting the word out about your company and what you do. But Barbara Corcoran, anyone who watches Shark Tank has probably seen these ads. And I was at home watching, and I turned to my wife and go, that's Bernie. Because I've told her about you, about how, you know, you're going to help, and here's a picture, help my son buy his house when he comes back out here at some point. But there you are from Shark Tank with Barbara Corcoran. And she used to be in real estate, but can you just give me a little, I mean, is she a friend? I was like, is she a friend of yours? She is now, I guess. How did you meet her, and what made you think that she might be a positive influence in your advertising campaign?
Well, I mean, she's, being that she's on Shark Tank, obviously a lot of people know who she is. She's been in the real estate business for obviously years, and that is really how she's made her name. So her people kind of reached out to our marketing people and put it together, and so she's become a friend, and she was gracious enough to do that with us, and endorses our company and recommends real estate, if you're going to buy or sell real estate in Nashville, to do it with us. And so so it's been a really great experience. I enjoyed working with her. I enjoyed filming that commercial with her, and it's been a really positive experience since we've been doing that
and
together.
Obviously from your perspective, and you are a very smart businessman, I mean, she comes to you with credibility, obviously, because of her background in Shark Tank. And so by her obviously being aware of what you do, I think she's kind of picky about who she's going to endorse and work with.
She is, and I think there's rules too on things you can do with her or without her in regards to the marketing aspect. So it's very important to her to make sure that not only she's endorsing the right people, but also how she's being endorsed by those particular people. So I mean, like I was sharing with you off air, she sends posts to my Facebook pages all the time, and so she's involved with my company at that level, and so it's been a blessing to have her as part of my team.
Okay. And again, we see so many real estate agents out there, and how important is the advertising aspect of it these days? What does that drive for you? I'm just curious from your perspective. You do a lot of it. There are others out there we see. What is the role? And not everyone can afford to do it certainly the way you do.
Well, I think it's important to give you some notoriety in the work that you do.
Like anything else.
Like anything else. And TV is certainly a really great avenue for that. I've gotten a lot of feedback in the time that you and I spent together. I think we've been working together. This is our 7th or 8th month now that we've been working together, so I appreciate the opportunity here. It just gives the listeners and the people who watch the show, gives me some credibility in the work that I do. It's not cheap to brand yourself and market yourself, and so I would say it's certainly not for the faint of heart. But if you are the type of person who wants to get people to know who you are, TV's a great opportunity, and billboards, which we have, and radio ads, and all those types of things all equate to some positive feedback.
And the advertising raises the profile for what you and your company does. But do you say it drives the ability to get listings? Is that the number one thing, would you say, or is it helping to sell homes?
I think that TV actually is more of a listing opportunity tool. We also have tools for buyers, which would drive a lot of buyers into our program also. But yeah, TV, radio, or really help with the listing side of it. Almost everybody is a buyer's agent. Almost every person will work with buyers, and so the amount of buyers that are agents that are out there are pretty plentiful. However, there's very few that actually specialize in listing property, and that's really what I do, and that's what our team does. We have a lot of buyers. Actually, we work with a ton more buyers than we actually do listings, but with the amount of volume we do, it's really all of those buyers coming in through all the sources that we market to, that we're able to serve all the listings that we serve. So yes, for us, we like these shows because we can share with the community that the challenge in listing. We're going to talk about that today too on the show, the challenge of listing and selling property. So when I was selling at a really high level, Nick, I sold about 1,600 listings myself, and then of course mixed in with that I had buyer's agents, so there were several thousand. Now there's over 7,000 house sales today, but just the level of experience that homeowners should have when they sell their home, and these are again some of the things we're going to chat about today.
Just remind folks, you told me last time, how many people do you think move to the Nashville area or this Middle Tennessee area a day? What do you hear? What's the scuttlebutt?
Well, I mean, you know, if you just go off the numbers you hear, right, how true they all are, about 80 people a day move to Nashville.
About that. Okay, more people moving here than moving away?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay. Not even close. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
I mean, just think about that. 80 people a day, and more people still continue to move here. Since you last been on, you come on every month, but has there been any shift or change in this market that you've seen in the direction we're going? I always like to get an update on how it's going. You say it remains hot.
Yes.
Not much has changed.
Well, I think it depends on what the change means. Is it different than it was in 2020?
Yeah.
Yes, because when interest rates are 3%, everybody wants. I mean, money is almost free at 3%, right? And so, who doesn't jump on a 3% interest rate?
Yeah.
Now that interest rates have climbed, they're what we call normalizing. So they're starting to get to what they used to be back in the day. This is actually a healthy market, though a lot of sellers would maybe argue that point, or even buyers would argue that point and saying, well, I'd rather have a 3.5 interest rate. Well, we should have bought in 2020 and 2021 and 22 if you wanted that rate. Today the rate is, you know, anywhere from, let's just say 7.5%. We'll just say that because it fluctuates. This is what the rate is today, and this is probably where the rate's going to stay. So we just need to get used to the new normal.
Before we get into the details, and we were going to talk about listing your home to sell, we've got Ann on the call. Let's say phone call.
Yeah.
Ann, good morning to you. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. I have a question. My street has become the home of numerous LLC-owned properties. Recently, due to public urination from men and the fact that they had pulled no permits, I got frustrated enough to try and track down the LLC. So my question to you is, my family and friends have joked for 40 years that I could find the dirt on anything. But tracking down an out-of-state LLC because of problems taking place on a property in Nashville is almost impossible. So how do you suggest I find out who actually owns the property, who to report the complaint to? I was shocked to be told by codes to call the emergency number when men were urinating on the side of the house they were working on, because it's such a problem now that Metro Police sends out carloads of officers to talk to these adult men.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to report it to the LLC or the company that's working there with false information on their vans when you can't even hunt them down, because they too live out of Davidson County.
Okay, let's see what we can do on this. And that's assuming the LLC, and maybe explain to folks what that is, would even do anything if she contacted them. But I bet you a lot of people running into this. So this is LLC. These are investors out of state buying up properties.
Well, they're investors whether they're out of state or not out of state.
Oh, okay.
It's just a protection that we get an opportunity as business owners to protect our assets through an LLC.
Do you deal with that much?
Yeah, I mean, I have an interesting situation right now, actually. So I'm going to try to answer Ann's question first, and then that is, and I'm not really sure how the best way it is to track this down. I think that you're doing the right thing. As the city grows, we're going to have a lot of different things going on within our city, and that's part of growth, right? I mean, we're no longer a small little country town. We are a big metropolitan city today, and so when people migrate into our cities, all sorts of different things happen, and so yes, I don't know how to answer that, Ann, other than saying continue to keep digging into the work that you're doing, because that kind of stuff needs to stop.
Well, yeah, I mean, but to reach out, I don't know how she goes about doing that, but the concern is, who do you complain to? I don't know. I guess, Ann, you've done the right thing. The city, Metro Police, they have better things to do than to respond to fellas urinating on a wall, okay? But, I mean, codes? I don't know where you go on something like that, but that's her neighborhood, and these are folks that own these properties that aren't in the area, so I don't know how much they really care. What's the situation?
Well, I guess I would say that if you're a homeowner, you probably do care a bit, and I don't know what
it's your investment.
It is your investment, and I'm not sure what her situation is or where she lives or any of that kind of stuff. But I can tell you most homeowners or property owners would care.
Okay.
Now, that's just opening Pandora's box to the situation that I wouldn't be able to address. However, I do think that she's doing the right thing by making the complaints to the city, calling the police if necessary, and eventually it's going to get to where it needs to get to hopefully get it stopped.
Yeah. Listen, we'll take a break. I know you had a thought that you might have wanted to share before you went ahead and answered Ann's question. And then when we also come back, we're going to talk about he always prepares me also, bringing me a listing for your home to sell, which is great. We're going to get into some of these basics, a lot of the questions people may have, and we can take more calls, 737-785-87. Back with Bernie Gallerani right after this. Stay with us. We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. We're looking over listing your home to sell. And I guess a lot of people right now, are there more people trying to sell or more people trying to buy in this market right now? What kind of market is it in the Nashville area?
Well, there are more people trying to sell right now.
Okay.
But there are still a ton of buyers out there, Nick. So I always love this to say, well, there are more buyers or are there more sellers? And I was like, well, there's equal amount because in order to have a buyer, you have to have a seller. Well, so a transaction has both.
Well, yeah, if a transaction occurs.
There's more inventory today than there was, let's say, 24, 36 months ago. Before, we had more buyers and less listing opportunity or less homes for sale. Today, we have more homes for sale than we have buyers.
Directly attributed to the interest rate, perhaps? Going up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's what, all right.
Yes, but watch. It's normal. Like, this is actually becoming normal, which is really great.
You said it's a healthier market.
It's a much healthier.
I agree with you. I agree. Okay.
We can't, like, here's the thing I try to share with people. When you're at 3.5% interest rate, it's really not healthy. We like it. It's attractive to buyers. It's attractive for money borrowers when you have that, but it's not really good for the country. Because there's no really any money for us to earn any money to pay back all this debt, right?
Exactly.
So with the country, that's what inflation really is about. So if you look at inflation, and some people get really upset about inflation. Well, if you look at inflation, it was absolutely a necessity based on what rates we were dealing with, and now we have to raise the rates to try to compensate the difference in inflation. So it has to be perfect for most people to really accept it, and we don't live in a perfect world. We live in an imperfect world.
Right.
So if we borrow a bunch of money and we pay out a bunch of money, we have to pay back that money through all sorts of different channels. And so interest rates right now help us to kind of balance the game.
Yeah, no, I think it's a healthier market. Would you say is there a bubble anywhere, the so-called bubble where people are way overbuying still, and at some point things come home to roost and they find themselves upside down in the house? That's what we went through before. Do you think there's any of that happening anywhere?
Well, I know that there are things like that happening. If you purchase a home, let's say the last 12 months, you're probably not having a lot of money or a lot of equity in that property to even sell the property today. So we are dealing with that now, where we have a client, or we have clients, and this is more than 5, that have purchased in the last 12 months that unfortunately need to sell. And so they're having to sell their home for less than they owe on the property, which means they're coming out of pocket money, or they're selling it just enough to try to get out of it. So yes, that's happening. What will happen in time? I think there'll be more of that. So the longer that people own homes over the next 24, 36 months, the equity position isn't like it was in 2020 and 21. So we're going to have some challenges in those particular areas. Not that the homes aren't going up, they're just not going up rapid enough to pay the selling expenses.
I still think real estate in a home, and you probably would agree, is one of the best investments you can make if you're going to stay in it for a period of time. I mean, these people you say have to, well, a while back you could sell it the next day for a profit, but the people who have to sell after 1 year, I'm guessing something came up in their life where they had no choice and they didn't anticipate that. If you're buying a home right now and thinking of flipping it the next day, depending on where it is, probably not the smartest move.
Well, I think we shared maybe on a show about renting, and if you're going to rent for a year, rent for a year. But if you're going to stay somewhere for 3 to 5 years, then you should be purchasing.
Exactly.
There's lots of tax advantages to purchasing, and then you develop equity position, as we talked about, I think, on the last show or show before last. So there's only benefits in owning real estate, but if you're going to do it on a very short-term basis, let's say 12, 18 months, then just rent.
Yeah, it's funny. Back when the markets were hot everywhere, and another really hot market was Vegas, right? I had a friend of mine who bought a condo, got in there, there's a condo for sale, bought it, I forget for how much, $300,000, sold it the next week for $500,000.
Yeah.
$200,000 profit in 2 weeks. And it's just because the market was that crazy, and he bought it just in that window, and he was able to get this property that was competitive. Can you believe that? Now, that doesn't exist right now.
It doesn't exist right now. It doesn't mean you can't find a deal out there that needs work, and that you fix it up and you make a profit. Those are called house flippers. They find ways, but even house flippers, I'm friends with investors that are house flippers, and they're even finding it more challenging in this market to do that kind of work. So, but real estate's always long-term, one of the best, most solid investments that you can make. There's not probably a homeowner today that bought a house 20 years ago that isn't sitting on massive equity as long as they didn't drain it out.
Exactly.
Right? There's a lot of money on
if they're borrowing on it and all of that.
That's exactly right. So if you invest in a house, you live in it, you enjoy it with your family, you pay the mortgage payment, you have equity today. I don't even need to know where you live. You have equity in that house today because the market allowed that. Between 2019 and 2023, we had most homeowners have a 65% equity position in their home just in that period of time, and that's a lot of money.
You bet it is.
And right now, those homeowners are actually still sitting on that money. Now, they may not be getting what they had hoped they originally would when they listed the home, but they do have quite a bit of equity. If they bought that home in 19 and they're sitting on it in 24, they have equity in their home. I mean, 99% of them are all sitting in massive equity right now.
And boy, you're right about the flippers, though. If you watch the Magnolia Network or some of those home and garden networks, they no longer really have flipping shows because it's been too hard to find those properties. Instead, most of the shows are about refurbishing and fixing up existing homes and turning around to sell them or something like that. But the flipping shows aren't there as much anymore.
Well, the inventory's not there. But it's not that it won't come back, right? And our business is very cyclical, where it's like a peak and a valley, right? So it goes up and it goes down, and you ride the waves of it is. And if it's but as we've said before, if you have to sell, if there's motivation to sell and there's something better in your life that you want to go to, it doesn't really matter what the market's doing. You're serving a purpose of moving to the next location or the next adventure of your life or whatever it might be. To wait, because if you wait for the market to go up, then the house you're going to purchase is going to go up, right? Raising tides raise all ships. And so if you sell a home for $500,000 and you go to move somewhere else and it's the top of the market at $500,000, and you buy a $500,000 home, you haven't really lost or gained anything. If you sell a home for $1 million and you go buy a home for $1 million, doesn't matter. If the house that was $1 million is now $800,000, then you go buy a house for $800,000, it's still the same thing. So in the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the market's doing because you're just purchasing. If you're purchasing somewhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. All right, let's talk about listing to your home to sell. Okay, the basics here, and this will lead us into this next break. But all right, you're saying, don't just say, okay, I'm going to Bernie right now. End of story, case closed. Or instead, do you want to interview more than one agent?
Yeah, so I would say this. I mean, I would love it if they interviewed me along with another agent, but homeowners should listen to more than one agent for the marketing plan and the exposure to get their home sold.
And what do you listen to? So when you call an agent, I mean, I guess for a lot of people, unless they may have a referral, someone say, oh, this guy helped me, why don't you call him? Some people maybe go right into the phone book and find someone, and they'll call this woman. I mean, they don't know. It's just when you do get through to someone, and what's the best way to find someone to call initially? What kind of questions do you ask?
That's good. And that's actually something we can do on another show, too, of all the questions you should be asking a realtor.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very important thing. No, I do. I don't
want to get too off base on
this.
No,
I think that's a really important question, and it's something I'll prepare for the next show. I will say this I'm not concerned about being interviewed against another agent. I actually think that a homeowner should talk with more than one. If they want to talk to 3, that's fine. Why I feel confident enough to say that is you're not going to find a realtor that exposes the home financially or through the airways as we do with the marketing plan that we have put together. So I think it's important to interview an agent, interview us, interview another agent, interview 3 other agents if you feel the need to do that. I'm not concerned at all that there's a marketing plan out there that comes anywhere close to the exposure that we give a listing, and you should know the difference between agent to agent and what they offer. So definitely interview more than one agent so you can get a better idea what the differences are between this agent and this agent, between agent A and agent B.
Do some agents cost more than others? What I mean by that is they're going to take a larger cut because they may be more established and will be able to get you more money for your home because they're better. How do you know that? Because some people may say, well, I'm going to go with this agent because he's only going to take this percentage and it's a lot cheaper than these others. Now, again, you sometimes get what you pay for.
Well, that's just it. I think you do get what you pay for. And yes, the cost of selling your home appears to be less if they charge a different commission, right? I mean, that's pretty attractive.
Yeah.
And yet, if they're charging a less commission, they're typically in need maybe of getting that listing potentially, all right?
Well, by the way, what typical is your commission? For someone. If you're going to sell my home, you're going to say, Nick, okay, I'll sell your home.
I'll have a different conversation in July, but today, right, because the market's changing a lot. Okay, right. These are things that we'll address in future shows. Today, it's typically 6% to list the property,
so
but that is changing based on what the market's doing.
Okay, so let's just say I come to you and I go, well, Bernie, 6% sounds good, but I've got this fella here. He's going to sell my house for 4%. How will you answer that?
Well, it really just depends on how he's paying the other agent, if that's part of his 4%. And then the other, let's just assume the 4% is a split.
Okay.
For the purpose of this. I can talk about this today. I won't be able to have a chat with you in a few months about this. But today, as the day we're sitting here in whatever day it is.
Because some laws have changed.
Laws have changed, yeah. So let's just say today it's 4%. Then the first question you want to ask is, what are they doing with that commission dollar? So if there's a 4% commission, let's say they're splitting that in half and they're paying 2% to another side, and then they're taking 2% for themselves. Then you want to find out, well, what are they doing with their 2%? So if I'm the listing agent, what am I doing with the 2% that I'm collecting? Where is that money going? Right? How are you going to expose my property to the community of buyers? And is there enough money there to do it at a high level? Because here's the difference. You could save 2%. Which let's just say is $10,000 in a commission, but yet you're negotiating $25,000 difference in the negotiating of the home.
Right.
Then you've lost.
That's right.
You haven't won. Yeah. So if you're let's just say you hire somebody like myself where it's 6% and I'm taking 3 and giving away 3. I'm taking some money and I'm investing that into exposing the property so more buyers will actually see it, more showings will show up,
you get more money.
It creates more opportunity to get more money. So you're not always, in most cases, and I'm going to say in a very high percentage of cases, when you save a percentage or two on the listing agent, you're losing typically in the negotiation process.
Okay, because there's not as much money to spend on selling your house.
Well, because they also have to earn a dollar for themselves,
I know. They have
right?
to make some money too.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly right. So you're asking yourself, so what are you doing with your 2%, or what are you doing with your 3%? Let's just say let's say it's a 6%, and the agent has 3%. Okay, so if the agent has 3% and they're not investing it, they get 3%. But also, if they're not investing it to market your home, you potentially could be losing in the negotiation process.
Yeah.
As I've said, it's always better to have multiple people wanting to buy your home, which is what we saw in 2020,
right.
which is the reason why overinflated prices and it becomes competitive. It's better to have that situation, and we can teach you how to put yourself in that situation more often than most agents can because of the amount of exposure we give to the property.
I'm glad you covered that. I think that's important.
Yeah.
I was worried. Listen, we got to take a break. We'll come back. I'll let you pick up where we left off as we go about listing your home to sell. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We are back on Morning Line. Bernie Gallerani is with us talking real estate. We're going into the list of ideas of how to go about selling your home. Talked about interviewing more than one person for a realtor. Right?
So, Nick, I think here's an issue that a lot of sellers deal with, and I'm going to caution them to try to not do this. Okay? Don't just pick an agent that you like. So I really like this particular person. Consider an agent with the most experience and has the highest level of success in selling the property. Okay. Right? So don't just look at and say, I'll give you an example. I know somebody who recently chose an agent who actually had never sold any homes because they just thought the person was sweet and nice. Yeah. That is a really not a good financial decision for you and your family to choose an agent because they're nice. A lot of homes don't sell because of the inexperience of the realtor. So it's important to find someone you like working with, but it's also important to find a track record in an agent, which is why you want to interview more than one. You want to ask for them to bring their track record. So you want, when you're interviewing an agent, you want to say, do me a favor and bring with me the amount of homes you sold in the last 12 months.
So and that's fair, and this is from the buyer or seller's point of view, but how does a new agent get going and get successful? Would that be maybe, because they don't have experience, if someone's a new agent and this is what they want to make their career, would that be going to work for someone like you and they could fall back on this as a beginner? I mean, everyone has to sell their first home. And you may be terrific at this, but you haven't sold one yet and you're still learning. I'm just curious, how does a new real estate agent get in there and do it right?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that new realtors can do.
Okay. I don't want to get you too far off base.
A lot of things new realtors can do. Marketing, advertising, being involved with business-to-business relationships where we have like networking groups, right? Yeah. Being involved with those types of things. You can knock on doors. You can send out postcards. You can do all sorts of things. But getting your foot in the door of a house to list it is a challenge for all new people, and it was for myself also. Okay. So you want to find an agent that's also resilient enough that says, hey, I'm going to make this happen regardless. But remember this, Nick, when you hire an agent to sell your home, you're hiring them to be, I like using $500,000, it's a good round number, and it's around our average sales price here in the area. If you have a $500,000 home and you're hiring somebody to sell it, which means you're asking them to collect as much money as possible on that $500,000 property, if you're hiring somebody that has never done the work at a high level, you are really choosing somebody that is, in essence, not responsible enough with your money because you're not being responsible enough with your money. It's almost like if you have a lawsuit, let's just say, right? I know you have lawyers on here sometimes, right? If you have a lawsuit, are you going to want to find a lawyer who's had a ton of trial experience? Someone who's, that there's let's just say there's $1 million lawsuit, and are you going to hire an attorney who is new out of school? Right? If you hire a new lawyer out of school, you're probably not going to be as effective as if you hire, an attorney who litigates all the time and is normally, goes to court and has this experience. Real estate is really not any different, right? If you're going to have heart surgery or brain surgery, do you want to have the guy that just graduated from heart school, or do you want someone who's operated on 200 or 300 heart? Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, this isn't really any different than that. And what we see a lot, constantly in our business, is homes that are here and that are improperly marketed, improperly exposed. Negotiations aren't as good as other agents can do, and that homeowner ends up walking away with a lot less money than they thought they would when they originally started, and it's really no fault of anybody else but their own.
Because they didn't search.
Because they didn't really search out the right talent.
Okay, well that's the key, is knowing when you find that talent and knowing to hire them. It just can be a daunting thing. A lot of people sell homes once, twice in their lives, and knowing how to go about choosing someone. That's why it's good that we're covering this. Can be tricky, and you're going to go sometimes with a friend's referral or someone that you like, because you don't understand. Not everyone gets to sit for an hour and talk to you. Unless they tune in.
It's not about business. Real estate is a business.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
It is.
Your home, in some essence, is personal and it's also business, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, and I share this with my agents, when we work with a buyer, we work with a seller. Mainly a seller, though, more so. But when we work with a buyer and seller, we're working with their money, and we're working with their emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a seller, you raised your family, you lived in this home, you had a lot of great memories, you have a certain expectation of the value of this particular property, and then an agent comes in and just caves in and says, yeah, I think it's really great, let's list it for $600 even though the comps say it's worth $500.
Mm-hmm.
And the homeowner oversells the agent because the agent's not experienced, and then the home just sits on the market for time in and time out. It doesn't ever get any real exposure, and it sits there, and at the end, when it expires off the market, and the agent and or the homeowner go, maybe it's just the market's not good right now. The market is great. It's fantastic. But it's not so great if you don't have somebody that knows how to cause the home to sell. So, and there's a lot of that going on within our community. We have 15,000 licensed realtors in the city of Nashville.
Is that right?
15,000. And 50% of those people do not sell a home in 12 months. So you have the other 50% who sell the remaining balance of that. Mm-hmm. And so you look at that, and the average agent sells 4 homes a year. So when you look at all of that equation, you're saying, I'm going to hire an agent who sells 4 homes a year, mm-hmm. in this particular case, who has 1 sale every 90 days. How experienced are they? If you came to work once every 90 days, are you really going to be all that great? No, you do this every day.
Exactly.
And this is how homeowners should look at it. This is not a game. This is a professional approach to selling houses, and anybody can get a license. You just go to school. It's not all that difficult to get a real estate license. You go get a real estate license, and the next thing you know, you're hiring someone to sell a $500,000 home, and then all of a sudden they're upset because it either didn't sell or they're taking less money. That's the homeowner's fault.
Yeah. So I can't tell you how many people I know that have left this business that I'm in or other businesses think, I'm going to go into real estate. And they get their license, like you said, and anyone can, and then they go out there and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And they don't last. Most of them are out of the business within 6 months saying, this ain't my cup of tea. It's hard.
All right, let's get to this section.
Okay.
So number 3, price your home to similar homes that have sold, not that are currently for sale. So what will happen is, an agent will bring comparables, and they'll say, look at all these homes for sale. They're just like yours. And I want you to look at this. It says not what currently is for sale, but what is actually sold.
Aren't most of the homes that are going to be currently for sale based on what has been sold before?
No.
It won't be?
Most homes that are currently listed today are what the homeowner wanted to list the home
just
for.
saying, this is what I want, this is what I think. And all right, so you have to say, well, let's be clear here. Let's look at what's sold on your block and what they've gone for. And what's a comparable sized house to yours, right? What
is actually sold. And that's the key thing is if you look at the number that have sold versus the number that are listed, there's emotion. We have a great saying in our business, and it's called, you can price your home in 2 ways. One, you can price your home in reality, or you can price your home in fantasy land. Where do you want to live your life? Most homeowners actually price it in fantasy land, so they overprice the property, and then the more aggressive sellers, or the people that have to sell, they actually get to reality, and those are the ones that are actually selling. And then a homeowner will say, well, hey, I don't want to sell my home for that. Well, then let's just not sell your home, because this is what the home sells for. Right. This is what they're going for. So the reality, too, is price it based on what our sold. Okay?
Gotcha.
Number 4, make sure that your home is in top condition, top selling condition. Paint the house if it needs to be painted. Replace the carpet if that's a need, right? I have in here, make sure it's clean during all the showings. Paint the walls if needed, the carpet, and also pressure wash your house. Clean the outside of it. Get the bugs off the lights. Yeah. Clean the porch off.
These can be simple cosmetic things.
These are simple, right?
Right.
If anybody's ever heard any of my radio shows I have around town, I always talk about if you're gonna sell a car, let's use that. It's small, right? If you're gonna sell a car, do you sell it dirty and beat up, or do you wash it and have it detailed? Well, your house is a much bigger investment.
Yep.
So you should really focus on making sure that your house is in top selling shape. Okay? All right. Number 5, there are buyers right now looking for a home like yours. This is going to probably throw people off.
All right.
There is a buyer. If you're a home seller today, there is a buyer right now looking for a home exactly like yours.
You're saying somewhere there's bound to be?
No, there absolutely 100% is. There's no doubt. I mean, I guarantee it. I'll stand here today and tell you, if you're a home seller today and you have a home for sale, there is a buyer right now that'll buy your house.
So the only question is price.
Price. So your home is usually not the problem.
Gotcha.
So the home's not the issue. Your price and exposure is the problem. So your price and the exposure is the issue. Okay. So, and I can go into we have an hour show, and I have about 40 hours of conversation just on this topic alone. Okay. So it's important that homeowners understand, if your home's not exposed, or if it is exposed, let's just say I even have the listing and I expose it at the level that we do. If the home isn't well kept, clean, and up to date, meaning if the carpet has holes on it, if it's dirty, people don't want to buy that. And if they do buy it, they're going to ask for a discount because they have to put the carpet in, right? If the walls aren't clean or they need to be painted, there's going to be a discount because the buyer wants a home that, if you're going to be competitively marketed at a price that is high, so the higher price in the neighborhood, let's just say, for the house you have, then it has to be a pristine property. Right? Yep. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Mow the lawn, everything. Okay.
All right, number 6. Showings. So this is going to be a really interesting one.
Okay.
The viewers out there may not like this one, but I guess, as you said earlier, you don't care, right?
No, well, I want them to care. I want them to learn. I want them to learn. So give it to them straight. They want the truth.
Yeah, if your home has the right exposure and the right price, it should have a minimum of 3 to 5 showings in the first 10 to 15 days. So if there is someone out there today that has a home on the market and they aren't seeing this number of 3 to 5 showings in the first 10 to 15 days,
something's wrong.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
Now, there are some conditional things, there are some things in here that would warrant this to be different. For example, if you have a home that's $2 million or $3 million, you probably don't need this amount of exposure to cause it to sell, because there is a lot of those kinds of buyers out there to absorb the market.
Okay.
All right. It doesn't mean the rule isn't the same. It just means that 3 to 5
maybe doesn't apply.
It doesn't apply. Yeah. Within the first 10 or 15 days. All right. 10 to 12 showings in the first 30 days. If you're a homeowner today and you've had your home on the market for 30 days and you haven't had 10 showings on your property on average, you have a price problem.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll have enough time in our last segment to hit number 7, which I think is really interesting as I'm reading that. And then we're going to talk about inspections, which drove me nuts.
Okay.
We'll take a break.
Let's do it.
Back. This is good stuff with Bernie Gallerani right after this. All right, Bernie Gallerani is with us right now, going over listing your home to sell. Some great points. Just talked about, you need to have 3 to 5 showings in the first 10 to 15 days. All right, so when you get through these showings, you're waiting. Okay, what kind of offers are we going to get? This is interesting. Point 7.
Yeah, so your first offer is usually your best offer.
First offer is the best. I thought someone was going to lowball you and see if you take it.
Well, let me rephrase that. The first person who makes you an offer typically will pay you the most.
Ah, okay. I see what you're saying.
Okay?
Gotcha.
And here's why. Let's just say your home's on the market for 2 weeks. You get an offer. It's been on the market 2 weeks now, and it's not quite what the seller wants. So what do they say, to the buyer? Hey, thank you very much, but I'm going to wait. Then they wait another 2 weeks. Another offer doesn't show up, and then now their house gets old on the market.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the longer it sits on the market, the more desperate the buyer feels you are as a seller, and their offers become lower because no one else has purchased the home. So what happens is it's the days on market that cause the lower offers moving forward. The amount of days it's been on makes it less interesting to the consumer.
So that's where the seller has to get with you and kind of that first offer, look at it and say, how good is this? Because if you say, I'm going to pass, and if it's the only offer you have at that point, right at the beginning, you're gambling that you're going to get more. And if you don't, like you say, the longer it is, you get those old apples and oranges.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess when they're talking, they'll go, Bernie, is this first offer? It's not exactly what I wanted, but does it fit the realm? And you'll say, based on what else is sold in this neighborhood and what we're looking at, I think this is a good one for you to grab. And if you don't, you may not get another one right off the bat.
I think that the viewers need to pay attention to is that most sellers, are overpriced from day one.
Yeah.
Not that the seller believes that, but the reality to it is the numbers always show that. Most homes do price adjustments before they get offers, or they get lower offers than they want, and the reason why that is the price is usually a little bit too high. So In this particular number 7 here that we have, your offer comes in, let's say within 2 weeks, it's less than you want and you turn it down. You'll say there's nothing to negotiate moving forward. Now because of time, it's killing your momentum.
Yeah, time's your enemy.
Time is your enemy.
People are going to assume it hasn't sold, there's something wrong with it, I can offer them less, they're going to get desperate.
And what's sad is then after 30, 40 days, they're like, well, we should reduce the price. And they reduce it down to what the offer was they couldn't get worked out.
Yeah.
And then they just spent another 6, 8 weeks in the property that they didn't need to with the stress of keeping their house up and clean. And by the way, we see this, and it even happens to us. And this is something I tell my agents on my team, is our job is to go in and tell them the truth. Yep. If they don't like the truth, stay with the truth. And if they have a price they want to list it for, then let's go with that price. But we have to always let them know the truth of what the value of the home is.
It's such a tough thing to do going through this, because the truth is, a certain degree, and we all can be this way, of greed comes into play. And you're thinking, I want to get as much as we can, which is understandable. And then sometimes you think, well, let's just put it out there. Maybe the perfect buyer will come along and love the house so much they'll give me exactly what I'm asking. And you have this pie in the sky. And I remember going through this when we sold our house, trying to decide, is this the best thing? Is this the best thing? And we ended up doing kind of what you said. With that first offer, it turned out to be the best one. And to this day, I think, we held out. Is there a chance we could have gotten more? I will never know, but I don't beat myself up over it. I was happy ultimately with what I got, and I didn't second guess myself. And I sure as heck didn't want to have to wait another 30 days to sell that thing or come down in price. But there's a little struggle going on there, and that's where I really want to defer to a realtor I trust to give me insight. Are you pretty darn sure that this is as good as it gets? And I'd want you to be able to tell me, listen, based on what I see, I think this is good. It may not have been exactly what you want, but you're rolling the dice if you don't take this. You could really cost yourself later. I want to hear that. Or if you think, Nick, frankly, I think you can do better. And then I may hold out. That's where I defer to the realtor. Well, I think
when you sold your house, you sold it early in 2020, right?
All bets are off on mine.
Well, here's what's interesting, though. So I get it, but so you sold your house, but even while you were living in your new home, you were developing that equity because of the time that we were in the housing market. So in reality, you might have not sold your home for what you wanted to, but the house that you owned, that you own now, that developed equity during the time that you owned it. So really, you didn't lose any money in the end. Could you have held out for a better offer? Potentially, but you also could have potentially not.
I just didn't want that headache, and I will never know the answer to that question. But the key is, are you satisfied with what you got?
Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. Inspections.
Go to inspections. We just said about 5 minutes.
All right. Cool. Most buyers will request a home inspection. Yep. That's normal. You're going to have contingencies on a home inspection.
So they send that inspector in, and you're like, oh, here he comes. He's going to find everything wrong with the house that I'm not aware of.
Or
that sucks.
A lot of sellers, or there's a percentage of sellers that think there's nothing wrong with this house, and I can promise you there's something wrong with every house.
Absolutely.
Every house has an issue. Okay. But I want the listeners to hear this. That inspector does not work for the seller. They work for the buyer. They're kind of like attorneys. I'm probably going to get attorneys that are going to be mad at me for saying this.
Oh, yeah.
Their job is to find a problem. An attorney's job is to find a problem.
And they always will. The
inspector will find a problem in every single house. I've had inspectors go into brand new construction and go, this has to be changed and that has to be done. Right? I mean, brand new, never lived in, and an inspector
finds an issue. Well, they have to, because they have to show that they're doing their job.
They have to show they're doing their job. Yeah. So the inspector's repair proposal is usually long and detailed, right? Yep. So what most homeowners do not understand.
4 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, they don't understand that you're seeing a summary report. The homeowner sees a summary report. The actual report is many, many pages long. Yeah. So when they give you a summary report, you have to then consider the following. You don't have to fix anything on the prepare proposal, so that is something you can say, no, I don't want to do.
You can say no, but then they can walk.
That's correct. You should fix most of it, if not all of the items that are on the list, and let me explain this why. If you don't fix the items on the list that you now have knowledge of, this is super important, so I'm going to say this fast, and that buyer walks, you now are legally responsible to addressing all of those items on that list on a property condition disclosure, so the next buyer knows all the problems.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wow. So you have to share that with them.
Yeah. So the homeowner says, well, I'm not going to fix that. The buyer needs to go somewhere else. And then now I would say to my homeowner, let me tell you why you don't want to do this. Because all the items you didn't want to fix now have to be disclosed in the property condition disclosure. So you might as well fix it now because it's going to scare the next buyer.
Dang. Okay. So just my experience was, we got got that list, okay? This was in a position really where we kind of probably could have, because at the time it was so hot, said we're not doing any of this. You want the house or not? We'll sell it to the next guy. That's not the way it is now. If you have that one. So what we did is we said, we'll fix half of these. And we told them which half, which 6. I think it was a list of like maybe 8 things. And we said, we'll fix these 4. We sent it back. Is this okay with you? And they said, fair enough. We fixed 4. The other 4 are the ones. And that's how it works.
As long as they bought the house and they agreed to it, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But in 2020, we had people that weren't even asking for inspections.
Which is insane, because there are things that they caught. There were some things on the inspection of our house that they were legit to ask for us to fix that, frankly, we weren't aware of. And I said, well, you're right. I guess we should fix that for you. I can't. And it's hard to imagine people not asking for an inspection on a purchase of this magnitude.
It happened a lot in 2020, 2021.
Oh, because they were so desperate. They said, well, we'll buy it, no inspection, so give it to us. And they'll roll the dice. And then they walk in there and find a wall full of termites.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yes.
You know?
Or a cracked foundation that they didn't see. Or mold somewhere they didn't see. And that stuff's expensive to remediate. Mold and foundation problems is very expensive. So that's not a recommendation. But however, that's what was happening in 2020. How much time do we have left?
Just about 30 seconds.
Okay. So the last one is the seller should never move out of the house unless the house is actually closed or one day before, because your house is never sold until the paper is signed and the check's on its way. So a lot of times sellers will move out a week early and then the financing will fall apart from the buyer. Please stay in your home as long as you possibly can until you absolutely have had the green light from the lender. All approvals have been done. They've got to clear to close from the... don't...
Has that ever happened?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's a problem.
Yes.
Man, sometimes, a lot of times homes are going to be sold on a contingency that the buyer is able to sell his home or her home, and it doesn't happen.
And sometimes clear to close don't happen. It doesn't happen until the day of closing. So it's never closed until it's never sold till it's actually sold.
Bernie, this is awesome stuff. This is great. All right, so what we'll do is next time you come on, among other things, we'll talk about the seller's point of view.
Yes.
Think that's good?
Yeah.
Tell folks how they can reach you. We've got your graphic up there. You posing nicely with Barbara Corcoran, your good friend.
Barbara and I, Barbara's great. I have so much fun with talking to her.
I bet you two did.
She's exactly who you think she is. BernieGallerani.com will give you all the things you need to know for our instant offer, our guaranteed program, sale program, everything you need to know, BernieGallerani.com.
Great. Programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.